photo of Jordan Walker in the batting cage, and you commented on, how massive he is. I mean, and the photo we know he's a big dude anyway, but seeing it in person, standing close, how much of a difference is it from how he looked last year?
Yeah, Bernie, I told him, I said, you're not the same dude you were last year. And I was with him probably 18 months ago. I was with him in Springfield talking to him for the first time, and that was the first day he had ever weighed 250 pounds. And now he's 260 pounds, and it's a different 260, too. It's not bulk as much as it is muscle. The arms are bigger, the shoulders are bigger, the quads are bigger. I mean, he looks like a tight end, an NFL tight end in the batter's box. He is 6'6", 259.4 pounds, and it's not just mass. It is ripped muscle. The kid has shown how serious he is about this. I mean, he didn't have to. He could have done whatever he wanted. He could have lived wherever he wanted this offseason, but he lived right here in Jupiter, Florida, because he wanted to work every day with the strength and conditioning staff. He wanted to work every day with Jose Akendo on his outfield play. So he has really made some major changes to his body, and I know fans get tired of the quote unquote best shape of his life, but this kid has put on some real noticeable bulk, and it's hard, hardcore muscle, and he looks really good right now.
John, I'm not just saying this, man. I don't do the kind of fake optimism or like overreacting to something. But I really believe, after thinking about what Jordan Walker went through last year, was not an easy campaign. I think he's poised to have a huge season. And it's interesting to me how, I'm not going to say he's being ignored. I'm talking about nationally. But I see all these lists that people put together, young hitters that are on the verge of a breakout, or and all this, and I never see him mentioned, and I'm not sure why people are sleeping on him a little bit, because I mean, it's all there to have a dynamic season offensively, and he'll be better defensively.
Yeah, Bernie, he didn't get one single vote period. First, second, third place for the Rookie of the Year, and no, he didn't deserve to win it. Corbin Carroll was the runaway winner. But he didn't get one single vote, and I wouldn't doubt that was a motivation. I think 71 and 91, the record, last year kind of sabotaged him a little bit, and it's caused him to go below the radar. But I mean, this kid has can't miss written on him in every sense of the word. And I've always said this, it's like he was built in a factory somewhere. He's 6'6", he's 260 pounds. His father went to MIT, his mother went to Harvard. Like, he has intelligence that's off the charts. His size is off the charts. He is 21 going on 31 in terms of maturity. I agree with you. I think he is like on a collision course with greatness, and we're going to see it this season.
He just gets a ball in the air a little more, but the way he works on stuff, it's not like, he's determined to be great. That's one of his best attributes. He wants to be great, and he'll put the work in to be great. So I can't wait to see him this year. And I think, listen, we all know Nolan Gorman is, you worry about that back a little bit, but I think Nolan Gorman, you look at his barrel rate last year, and he was barreling up pitches all better at a higher rate than all but 7 other major league hitters. He's also capable of having a monster season. Imagine how good the Cardinals will be if both of those guys, and I'm not limiting it to them, but if Walker and Gorman just go off and they both have huge years.
Yeah, that was the belief of the Cardinals, is they were a top 10 offense last year, and they were kind of hot and cold, and I think they might have been 19th in runs scored. Did they address the offense much this offseason? No, but they're banking on Gorman's going to be a lot better. The only thing standing between Gorman and 30 home runs is his back being healthy. They're banking on Jordan Walker making a leap. They're banking on Lars Nootbaar making a leap. And, Nolan Arenado looks like a man possessed already. Like, he came in today talking about, everybody's saying I'm too old. Everybody says I can't field anymore. That's a guy coming in with something to prove, with a chip on his shoulder. So, will they hit on all those things? No, probably not. But if they hit on 3 of those 4, that offense has a chance to be in the top 5 this year.
No doubt about it. See, and I think that's one of the factors. Maybe nationally, it's underestimated a little bit. Yeah, we all agree the Cardinals could have maybe had more. They were aggressive and they got a lot done this offseason. I'm actually pleased with their aggressiveness. You can say, well, it would have been nice if they would have gotten one of those, other than Sonny Gray, another one of those top pitchers. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. I think we underestimate collectively some stuff about them. I think the hunger in that camp is something that's going to be a lot different from, what we saw last season. The hunger subsided. It was kind of a mess from the beginning. You got a lot of people in that camp with stuff they feel they have to prove, and they're damn sure driven to do it.
Yeah, no doubt. And the players have talked about that there's a text chain, among the players. They're getting to Jupiter early. They're getting to Jupiter hungry. They don't want to go through what they went through last year. And, they feel like they let this organization down. We all know the Cardinals are used to winning. They don't like having their name attached to 71 and 91. They don't like having their name attached to the worst record in 33 years. I do think it's a hungry bunch. That's the reason Nolan Arenault's already here. That's the reason that Lars Nootbaar has been here a couple of days. Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn were here on Monday. They don't have to be here until Sunday. You're going to get a hungry bunch this year, and does that mean they're going to win the World Series? No, but does it mean they're going to be better this season? I really think it does.
John, listen, I know it's really early, and 2 weeks from now, you'll be in position to have a better answer for this because you will have seen a lot more 2 weeks from now. But could you contrast for us your impressions of training camp already, just in terms of what all the junk that happened last spring training that kind of just got everything off to a bad start? How's the vibe right now compared to the earliest days of last spring training?
Yeah, we were kind of joking in the media room the other day how much different it feels because, last year was pretty miserable, Bernie. There wasn't a lot of hope. There wasn't a lot of hope last year. There weren't a lot of bright spots. Nolan Arenado said today, he's like, it's not being rude, but I don't really want to talk about last year anymore. He said we got to not only be better than we were last year, we got to be a lot better. It was pretty bad, and that thing went south pretty quickly, and they never recovered from the fast start. They had that one stretch where they swept the Red Sox, and they played well in Chicago and came home and beat the Dodgers and the Brewers. But other than that, they did not play good baseball, and I think it has a lot to do with the momentum. It has a lot to do with the desire to be better, and it has a lot to do with the hunger, and it does feel different. They don't have 18 players going off to the WBC right now. The focus is here. It's not, hey, I'm going to go play for my country in South Korea. Every team in the league had players on the WBC. The Cardinals had 18 players, the most of any team in baseball. So the focus is solely here, and it's not on anything else right now.
John Denton wrote about Keenan Middleton, and that was part of I read everything he writes, but it's part of the newsletter he does usually. That's also a story that he does, but you get something sent right to you in your inbox, which you ought to sign up for, and go to MLB.com and read any of his stories. You'll see the link to do that. I do it. It just arrives first thing in the inbox, so it's a great service. But you spent a little time talking with Keenan Middleton, their new late inning reliever. He seems like a really interesting guy, and he seems like he's a good fit. But you tell us, because you got a chance to spend time with him. Give us your impressions of Keenan Middleton.
Yeah, Bernie, he's a basketball player he feels like he's a basketball player who plays baseball. Like, he's got swagger. He's got he'll glare at a guy after he strikes him out. He'll pump his fist after he strikes a guy out. And he kind of really figured something out last year. He's a guy who's never been to the playoffs in 8 years, and he said, hey, I want to win. Like, I'm done with this other stuff. I want to win. He, for years he relied on a fastball. It was 97 miles an hour on average in 2020. It was 96 miles an hour a couple years ago, and then 95 last year. He changed his game last year. He threw his changeup. He went from using his changeup 17% of the time to 43% of the time last year. And he admitted I had to swallow my manhood a little bit. I used to be this bravado, macho guy who tried to blow everybody away. The changeup was a godsend for him, and it changed who he is as a pitcher. It's like a career-altering pitch. And, Ali Marmol mentioned it. It's a 30-year-old guy who's kind of figuring it out, and the Cardinals feel like they're getting him right as he's going into his prime. So he's going to bring a little bit of edge to the bullpen. He's not always going to see eye to eye with the manager or his teammates, and he's not afraid to speak up. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out, because he has a ton of athleticism and a ton of upside, and it feels like he knows he understands how to attack hitters better now.
When you all talked to John Mozeliak the other day, and appreciate all the good questions you and Derek and others asked, I knew obviously they were busy and they made a lot of moves, and that started with just sort of clearing out some dead wood too. But I guess I didn't realize until listening to that conversation that the Cardinals have turned over such a large percentage of their roster. I mean, it really is impressive in that regard. And what do you think that will do for them? I know the goal is for them to be better, but what do you think that does for them to get rid of clear out some of the dead branches and, bring in a lot of fresh talent? What do you think the effects of that will be?
Yeah, there's a big chunk of newcomers here. I think there's 10 new pitchers on the 40-man roster and 15 new players on the 40-man roster who weren't here last year. And I think it sends the message that, Ali Marmol said late in the season, if you're not pulling in the same direction as the rest of us, you're not going to be here. And they've kind of done that. And not everybody who's gone was doing that, but they have sent a message that they want everybody on board, pulling the same way, playing for the team and not playing for themselves. And they've gone out and flipped over a roster that clearly didn't work, a roster that clearly needed addressing. And we'll see. Are they going to hit on some of these young pitchers that they've brought in? The Dave Robertsons, or not Dave Robertson, Nick Robertson, Riley O'Brien, Nick Fernandez. Are they going to find a jewel in one of those guys who don't have a lot of experience? But they've kind of gone with the theory that if we bring in a lot of good young pitchers, maybe a couple of them will hit, and they're kind of mining for gold there. They're looking for one of those young guys to hit. So we'll see what happens over the next 6 weeks, and maybe one of those guys will emerge.
John, I got one more question for you, and as always, thank you for your time. What is your sense about, and I know you all have talked to Ali Marmol at various intervals this offseason, including spring training. What's your sense about how they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that defense is better, a lot better, and make sure the base running's a lot better, more reminiscent of what we saw in 2022? Like, is it a proactive thing? Like, are they putting more of an emphasis on this or that? How are they going to get better in those areas?
Yeah, it's a priority from the start. They want to, not skip steps. They want to handle the fundamentals the way they have in the past. And, a dirt devil like Daniel Scalzo, a guy who, his uniform was dirty every game he played in St. Louis and Colorado and Arizona, he's going to help. Like, he's going to be hands-on, nuts and bolts. I've seen him running around camp already. He's got his glove on. He's ready to get in the mix of it. And, this franchise prided themselves for years on being the gold standard when it comes to defense. The Cardinals have like 40 more gold gloves than the next closest franchise. They have 99 gold gloves. Well, guess what? They had 99 going into last season. They didn't add one gold glove this past season. They fell way short of their standards, and I expect them to. We all know they were a different defensive team the second half of the season than they were the first half of the season. That was more like the Cardinals. And I think they'll play better defense this year. With a full season of Tommy Edman in center field, Mason Wynn is going to be electrifying at shortstop if he hits enough. Nolan Arenado has that chip on his shoulder. They're definitely going to be better defensively this year.
John, have a great weekend. Work hard, but not too hard, and we'll talk to you next week. We'll be reading you.
Take care, Bernie. Thanks.
All right, see you. That's our friend John Denton, MLB.com. You can follow him on Twitter at John Denton 555 at John Denton 555. I was looking at Jim Hewer, and their roster churn, so to speak, actually started at the trade deadline last year, the trade deadline last year. So we can talk about like the off-season additions, and have been a lot. But I think the best way to account for that is to go back to when it started, which was the trade deadline. And, from my count, the Cardinals only have like the 40-man roster's got, I believe, from guys that were there before the trade deadline. Sorry, I got to explain this better.
Yeah, sure.
Guys that are on the team now, or guys that are on the 40-man roster now, that were on the roster before the trade deadline last summer. And based on my count, it's 22. It's different if you just take into account the off season, but I think it should start at that deadline. That's when they started to begin to turn the roster. So, 22 of the 40, only 22 of the 40 were on this 40-man roster before last summer's trade deadline. That means, you got 16 new pieces that weren't here before that trade deadline last summer, and I think that's impressive. I think that really matters. And I think that I'm glad that all came up earlier this week, because I think that is significant and it can lead to really good things. Because when you have so many pieces, you have so many dead branches, so much dead wood, so much rot, that you just had to get out of there. You just had to expunge it, clean it up, get it out. That's the first step. And I don't think people pay enough attention to that. Getting rid of a lot of dead tree branches. And then part two is, what do you bring in to restock? Well, they brought in a lot of pitching. We'll see if they knew what they were doing, but no one of sound mind can say they didn't get after it as far as bringing in a lot of new pitchers. Now, again, I know we got a problem, when the Q-tips aren't handy. I know that. Again, if you want to say, well, I just would like to have seen them. They should have pursued a couple of higher caliber pitchers. Okay, fine. That's all. That's a different topic, okay? That's the wish casting thing. But as far as actually turning this roster over by a huge percentage, they did it. And me being around here a long time, I'd have to go back and do some research. Not now, of course. I don't remember the last time the Cardinals turned their roster over to this magnitude from one trade deadline to the start of spring training. It's a lot.
There's been a whole lot of overturn when you look at it from that standpoint, from last year's trade deadline. And with that statement, they got to get credit for that. They just didn't stand around. Well, we got a few things.
They didn't do
here.
Anything.
Yeah,
they didn't do anything.
You can't make that statement when you're overturning more than 50% of that 40-man roster from just what was that 6-7 months ago? I mean, come on.
They're right. It's close to 50%. I mean, that's a pretty big number, and I do like a lot of the young arms that they've brought in for their bullpen, and let's see. But the people that are saying, well, Mo doesn't know what he's doing with the relief pitching. Yeah, you may be right, except that's why Mo, to his credit, said, got in touch with Chaim Bloom and said, we could really use your help. Because Chaim Bloom in his career has had a really nice touch with evaluating relief pitching prospects and what they're capable of doing. And every one of these new guys they brought in, I'm talking about bullpen guys, all of them were brought in here, whatever way they came here, all of them were brought here with Chaim Bloom having a major role in those recommendations and those decisions. So before you do the lazy, natural thing, well, Mo, that's the same guy.
Hungry? Penn Station East Coast Subs has the hot grilled subs you crave, their famous fresh squeeze lemonade, and how could you not order those delicious fresh cut fries? Try favorites like the Philly cheesesteak, mouthwatering chicken teriyaki, hot Italian, and you can't forget our cold deli classic subs. Penn Station has you covered with party sub trays for your next big game or office party. It's all about good taste. Simply order online at penn-station.com or stop in a store near you. Penn Station East Coast Subs.
Signed Brett Cecil. Okay. Before you do that lazy thing, just remember Chaim Bloom actually is the number one factor in the relievers that have joined this organization since the start of the offseason. There's no question about that. So that's why people need to kind of just get in there a little bit, sharpen the focus and understand why things are dramatically different. Now, will that show up in the one-loss record? Will that mean they're going to win 93 games? No, I'm not saying that. But what's the first step? The first step is getting rid of junk that you had. You had a big junk pile on that 40-man roster, and you took that all out, and you took it to the landfill or the recycling plant, whatever, and you got rid of all that garbage and junk. And you brought in a lot of younger, fresher talent with more upside on that pitching staff. Again, I'm not going to do the stupid thing where you sit here now and say, "Well, can they win the World Series?" Can we wait and see him play for? Can you give me till Memorial Day? Right?
Yeah.
Can we see what some of these young pitchers with tremendous upside do? Right?
Absolutely.
And then we can talk about that. But again, I'm being really repetitive today. It starts with getting rid of the junk and replacing it with talent that may not be as established as you'd like, but it's very young talent with real, true ability and a pretty significant amount of upside. I welcome that transition. I'm not hung up on name acquisitions, right? I don't need to see, well, that guy's, here's a big, here's what they need to sign. And then you go to a list and you pick out the 5 biggest names. I'm not into that. Y'all can be if you want. I'm not. Because I remember a lot of great Cardinals bullpens that were put together from within or put together without spending a fortune on pricey relievers. The relievers are the most, what's the word? Just in terms of the most fluid part of the talent flow like you have as an organization. Relief pitchers come and go. You use 15, 16 of them every year. You go through them all the time. Then you got to go get more. I mean, they're in and they're out. Well, those guys, okay, now let's go get a new shipment. I mean, that's the thing. You don't have a standard bullpen for an entire year. I'm not sure why that seems to be the thing that's perceived. I wonder what their bullpen will look like by the All-Star break or by August 1st or whatever. Anyway, I got to stop whining.
No, as far as the bullpen conversation goes, if you look at the way the game is played today, it is more the bullpens are more prevalent in winning baseball games than they ever have been because of the way they're being used now. Right. And the fact that they turned that whole bullpen over, they had to because it was awful last year, and has been very good for the last couple of years, except for maybe a couple of guys down there. It's got to be an entire group. It can't be just 2 guys and go, "That's my bullpen. I'm going to live off those 2." That's not the way it works anymore. And it's encouraging, at least for me, that you mentioned Chaim Bloom, that he's here, because that tells me the Cardinals at least are going, we need some help here. Here's a guy who can help us fortify this bullpen, which hasn't been good enough for a couple of seasons now. We've had a couple guys down there, and we ran them into the ground, but we didn't have enough to get us through an entire season. And you got to have an arsenal if you want to have a good team and a really good bullpen. And, I mean, we've seen good bullpens throughout Major League Baseball. And, Bernie, there's so many of them when you go, well, that guy, they just picked him up. Well, yeah, they just picked him up, and guess what? He's playing a prominent role because they found a thing that he could do and do it well, and they're utilizing him. You know, a bullpen like Milwaukee the last couple of years, there's 3 or 4 guys that were just picked up, and boom, they're in there. They're pitching 1 inning on a given night, and a couple 3 times a week, and they're helping them win games. There's so many teams like that who are successful, and that's the way the game's played now. And the Cardinals have got to do a better job of it. And with this overturn that we're talking about, it should be improved this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays itself out.
Yeah, the thing they're going to need to do too is this can't be done overnight, but they've got to be. It's just like starting pitching. They got to be able to get back to the time where they were able to draft and develop and cultivate bullpen guys too. I mean, I was doing more research on this the other day. When I mentioned it on the air, but. You look at 2012, which was a really good team. You had Trevor Rosenthal and I forgot when he came up, but he came up during the season. I think later in the season. You had Trevor Rosenthal, age 22. You had Joe Kelly, who made some starts, but he also pitched in relief. He was 24. Shelby Miller came up, but as a reliever in 2012. 21 years old. Sam Freeman, who I thought was actually a pretty decent lefty, didn't get a full opportunity. But Sam Freeman, 25 years old. Then you look at the 2013 National League pennant winner. The ages for that season, Rosenthal was 23, gave him 74 games. Seth Maness, 24, he gave him 66 games. Seagrass, 23, gave him 45 appearances. Joe Kelly, 25, gave him 37 appearances. Shelby Miller was in your rotation at age 22. Carlos Martinez at age 21 was in your bullpen. Waka at age 21 was in your starting rotation. So if you look at, you know what my dream is, so to speak. It isn't that Bill DeWitt, spend $200 million on one pitcher, and then he wins the press conference. And everyone's, wants to plan the parade because he spent money. Not necessarily that it was the right decision, but just that he spent money. Mm-hmm. I kind of prefer it this way, where that 2013 team was excellent, won 97 games, excellent baseball team, and that bullpen had a bunch of 23-year-old, 24, 25-year-old, 21-year-old guys, and their rotation had 21-year-old Michael Waka and 22-year-old Shelby Miller. That's what you need to do. That's what you must reestablish. That is the priority. Not getting into my wallet's bigger than yours, so I'm just going to pull it right out and show you, and I'm going to spend $180 million on some guy that's going to break down and spend a year and a half on the IL. Give me a big supply of young, homegrown, talented pitchers. Get back to those days. Because if you look at the 2012 team, the 13 team, the 14 team, the 15 team, all of those teams were very successful in terms of winning a lot of ball games. Okay? They all had young starting pitchers, at least a couple, and they all had a bullpen filled with young relievers. In addition to the people that I mentioned, Matt Bowman was good for them. He was just that middle innings guy that had to eat innings for you. He was good at the role, right?
Yep.
That's another one. And it's funny when you look at some of the people they signed during that time, you're like, oh my goodness, boy, they should have given the ball to this guy or that guy, one of their young guys that never got a full opportunity. So I've made my point. Mm-hmm. That's where the Cardinals need to be, because that's what Bill DeWitt wants to do anyway, and they used to be damn good at it, but they've lost their way. And they're going to have the 7th pick in the draft. Eric Gould wrote a good story about that. Go take a look at it, STL Today. And they're going to have the 7th pick in the draft. And, he focused on Wake Forest because Wake Forest has got all these elite prospects. not only pitchers but position players. Just read the whole thing, and the Cardinals would be in position, I think. Well, I would hope at the 7th overall pick of being able to draft a guy that can be a transformative pitcher. Maybe not right away. It's going to take a while, and there's never a guarantee. But they need to strike gold with that 7th pick. They just have to, because that can get this whole thing restarted, developing their own really, really good pitching that will last them several years and keep it at a high level.
That keeps you from having to spend all that money just to get a couple of guys to fill a hole here and there every other year. As long as you've got guys coming through the system, you gave the numbers, you gave the names. And, man, it was a good time, because every time you thought somebody – you had that hole burning, you went, yeah, the Cardinals have been good about finding that next guy in that bullpen. And they haven't been lately. But during that era that you're speaking of, I never felt like – oh, no, there's a hole there. Well, no, there's another arm coming up that's going to fill.
So many. I mean, even some of their fringe guys were better than guys that they had last year.
Yes.
Like Tui Valela, remember him?
Yeah.
Sam? Yeah. He wasn't bad. But there were other guys who were better, so they didn't use him that much.
Right.
Hell, he would have been like their third best reliever last year.
He would have gotten a lot of appearances. I know that.
I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but anyway. Can I read one more thing and
Sure.
we'll take a break just to close it out? This made me let me use the old cliche. I laughed and I cried.
Oh, no.
Not literally.
I know what you mean.
But reading Derek Gould's piece on Wake Forest and how there's this treasure trove of talent, including pitching, available in the draft. And he writes this, and let me read it to you. Quote, a joint venture between the Wake Forest Athletic Department and the Atrium Health Wake Forest Medical Center. They have a pitching lab that is outfitted with the latest technology in pitch metrics and biomechanics. A team of students helps operate the lab, and they dissect the data the baseball program then uses to improve the pitcher performance. This past season, the Wake Forest pitching staff struck out 779 batters in 581 innings, the third most strikeouts for a team in an NCAA Division I history.
Oh, man.
But can we pause to process that again? This is a college baseball program that has never been really all that good. Now they are. This is a college baseball program that has an elaborate cutting-edge, well-advanced, everything you need, state-of-the-art pitching lab operation, right?
Yes.
And the Cardinals are just now starting to do that. Well, we have a portable lab, but until we can rebuild that complex down in Jupiter, which was delayed, and it wasn't the Cardinals' fault. But what does it say about them that you've got a college baseball program light years ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals when it comes to taking advantage of all the new ways there are to identify and enhance and improve and develop pitching? Wake Forest is like light years ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals. That's the stuff that people should be ticked off about. That's the stuff. Not that he's not flinging money around like a crazy man. If he's going to fling money around, well, why don't you get your pitching area up to speed so you're not lagging behind college baseball programs? Was that loud enough?
That was perfect. I agree with you.
People if you're determined, whoever's listening, to be one of those perpetually angry Cardinals fans, okay, fine. You got stuff to be really ticked off about. My problem is you get ticked off about the wrong stuff, or you don't take into consideration other stuff that, in terms of long-term health of the baseball part of the franchise. Stuff that's been neglected and has fallen behind. And that's why you're in this damn situation where all of you are screaming at him to spend, $300 million or whatever on starting pitching. Oh, you got to go out and get that Oh, you got to get that $9 million reliever. Oh, you got to get that. You got to get that $11 million reliever. You're screaming about spending, and you're ignoring why they're even in that situation. You got Wake Forest baseball that is like incredibly. It's like they've lapped the St. Louis Cardinals in terms of identifying, developing, and enhancing pitching talent. Wake Forest.
It's embarrassing.
And it's like, well, no, but let's just talk about they should throw. I'm trying to think who they can throw some more money at. Let's go. Let's just throw some money right now. Actually, take some money and try to rebuild the thing that you've basically squandered. Your advantage in drafting, developing young pitching. That was their strength. And now that they would be embarrassed to compare their pitching operation, they'd be embarrassed by the comparison. Their pitching operation compared to Wake Forest. An ACC baseball team compared to one of the great franchises in the history of the major leagues. Right?
Pretty sad. Maybe it should just upgrade the Commodore 64s they're using and try and get with the real times. I mean, it's pretty awful.
All right, I'll shut up now. Calm down. I need to take. Well, actually, I was going to say I need to take a swig of coffee. I probably don't need that actually. The way I'm hollering about things. Anyway, but I fight a losing battle, so I don't even know why I get worked up. It's a losing battle. It's always going to be about the money. And people just ignore everything else and fail to realize that by ignoring everything else, they're actually identifying the most egregious thing about the operation. I don't understand. But that's just me.
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this year, though, with some of these changes.
Yeah.
See how that affects everything.
Yeah, what the hell is their pitching, quote, lab been the last few years? What has it been?
I wonder. That iPad we talked about?
Is there some van out in the parking lot? What is it?
I don't know.
I don't know. What could it possibly be?
I mean, everything might have been on that iPad that Dusty Blake. Yeah. That might have been it. This is all we got, guys. Here it is.
It's like Amazon or FedEx or somebody. They deliver this big box, and it's like, well, we have a delivery for Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Mozeliak. Oh, okay. Well, what is it? It says here this is your pitching lab. They open it up, and there's like 75 iPads. That's it.
That's it. Right?
That's the pitching lab. And even some of them might be rentals or something. I don't know. Right?
Oh, boy, you're right.
Or they might be an outdated version of the iPad. I'm taking cheap shots. They have it coming, though.
Yeah, they do. They have to improve on all of this. The information it's got to be better. It's got to be better.
That's right. It's fine. At least I made you laugh today.
It's good to laugh.
And you're tired today, so that's good to make you laugh.
Okay, we're having fun.